I'm going to begin this week's lecture with a brief discussion on Helvetica. We're going to talk a little bit about why it is so popular and why it has continued to inspire people and be used in so many public displays, and why this might be a font that you choose to use in your next design endeavor. So this is an all-around great font to use. It's sort of an inconspicuous font at first, but the more you look at it, the more you realize that the minute details are what really make it. So this font is actually so unique that it inspired a documentary and books around it, which you should definitely watch. I think I posted it in the first week of the course. So technically, Helvetica is a sans serif grotesque typeface, and it was based on the Axdiens grotesque typeface created by Berthold around 1898. But this version was designed in 1957 by Max Meidinger and Edward Hoffman in Switzerland. So the font was originally called Die Neue Haas Grotesque, and it was based closely to the font Shelter Grotesque. And this font wasn't meant to look like anything. It wasn't meant to be anything else other than something very basic. It wasn't supposed to have any associations or any meanings. And this is what makes it so versatile in its usage. It's an image of the font before it was renamed Helvetica, as we can see here. And in 1960, the name was changed to make it more available internationally, as it previously had a German name. And Helvetia was what it was supposed to be called, which is the Latin word for the country of Switzerland where it was invented. But Helvetica means Swiss. So this little brochure kind of shows off the different usages of it, with the V's right here being a bit more stylized, with the triangles of the contrasting color in there. So this is just kind of showing what it looks like in different points or different sizes. And this image of these cups shows the variations in the different thicknesses of the letters in the font. So they're actually all done by different designers. And there's a compressed version of it too. So there's just different reasons to use or just different stylistic choices to use different versions of the font. There was a font called Neue Helvetica in 1983, which was more unified looking font, and the widths and the heights of the letters were a lot more similar. And this made the font a little bit more easy to read, and there was more spacing between the different numbers, and the punctuation marks were a lot more clear to the eye. So this one kind of improved the readability and the reception of it. But the newest version of the font wound up resembling, so as you can see, it's a little bit more uniform, more cohesive through the different lines. So that had its place as well. And this font definitely rose to popularity in post-war Europe during this international art scenes, international design boom. And this was a no-nonsense font. It didn't have all the kitschiness to it. It didn't have the embellishments and the decoration. And this was kind of different from the advertisements that were being seen at the time. So this was a little bit more just back to basics, kind of stripping the font of anything that might be less than straightforward. Helvetica was associated with corporations and corporate culture and business, so now it kind of almost has that subliminal message when you're looking at something done in the Helvetica typeface. You're seeing that because at the time people were hoping to, in corporate advertising, leave behind the kitschiness from before. So Helvetica was a very sleek looking font. It was definitely something to define the time period. And as you can see in the next slide, this is sort of why companies like American Apparel and Target chose to use this typeface for their logos. It's just very modern looking, I think. It's just you know, it's very readable. There are no serifs to it, so it's perfect for a logo or being used in a very large format. Since this font has become so popular these days, I say a lot of times when I'm designing something, I'll use Arial instead, because you know it's sort of something that you can't quite put your finger on, but you know when you're seeing Helvetica just because it really is everywhere. A few key identifying features of Helvetica are that there are no diagonal terminations on the stroke, so nothing ends in a diagonal direction, and there was a lot of attention paid to the negative space in the font. Going back to this brochure for just a second, you can really see that kind of highlighted in the two V's right here. So they're pointing out basically the detail that was paid to the negative space within this typeface. And is the case with a few other different fonts. You can see a perfect teardrop on the diagonal within the letter A, and that was, I don't know if it was intentional as a teardrop, but it is a very perfect identifiable geometric shape, although it is an organic one. The strokes are fairly even in the font. It has some monotone, and the other thing that is interesting about this font is that it is used often at subway stations or with airlines or automakers signage because it is one of the fonts that is actually very easy to read while in motion. Favorites because you see the mountains in the background of the Evian logo, and it kind of reminds me of the origin of the typeface. It reminds me of Switzerland a little bit, so I thought that was kind of clever. I don't know if that was intentional either, but yeah, I think it's really cool. And I also, another thing about this logo, I think the colors use this combination of the kind of orange red, the pink, and the blue was a really interesting choice. So yeah, enough about. So that is a very, very basic introduction to the font called Helvetica.